Well, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of All Out War. I am Turner, and I am joined in the studio with Rosie. Rosie, what's up?
Hey, what's up?
How you doing?
I'm good, man.
And the lovely Rachel. Rachel, how are you?
How is everybody?
Tired. Head hurts.
Tired and head hurts. Guys, this is crazy. This is, what's today? Today's the 25th of October. This is the Halloween episode, I guess you could call it.
Yeah.
We did something last year, you and I did, Rosie. We were talking about the origins of Halloween and the connection with the church and all that stuff. And
I think the one before that we talked about the Salem witch trial.
yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
I can't remember, but
which we defended.
we defended.
I did.
We did.
I've become more on that. Even, you know what? Speaking
After
of
tonight,
I was going to say I made a public proclamation a couple weeks ago.
yeah.
I was like, you know what? I think in Salem back in the 1600s or whatever it was, there's a lot of witches that needed to be burned. So I am in favor of that. The Bible says it's okay, so I'm good. And I think after this episode, which you guys hear, everyone else will be with me, and we can all pick up our pitchforks, and we shall go burn witches. I think that's a good thing.
Oh man, if it wasn't true, we gotta laugh, right? I mean, what else you can do? Oh man. So Rosie's right. This is a crazy episode. Like we have a really amazing guest, and Jessie is. We'll get to her in just a second, but let's do this. Rosie, what do you know?
Hey, did you know that you know the country of Liechtenstein, right?
Yeah.
All right. Do you know that it is so small and the borders are like so non-existent that they literally always keep getting invaded by Switzerland?
Wow.
Because Switzerland's like its biggest neighbor, and every time
by accident, or
by accident, because like there's troops. It happens all the time. So it's like some Swiss army will be doing like some training, and they'll just accidentally go invade the country because they'll like go cross over the border,
right?
Like while they're doing a hike or something like that. And literally every time Switzerland.
Oh yeah,
Switzerland. Yeah, I was gonna say Sweden. It's not Sweden. It's Switzerland. Every time the Swiss come out and they're like, "Hey, we kind of invaded your country last night. We're sorry about that." Like literally all the time, they're like, "Yeah, no problem." This is a real quote from Marx Ammon, the Interior Ministry spokesman. Just one of the times it happened, he said, "Nobody noticed in Liechtenstein." He said, "It's not like they stormed over here with attack helicopters or something. It's no problem. These things happen." So like literally all the time they keep getting invaded, and he's just like, yeah, it's fine. It happens.
That's amazing.
They're just like so whatever about it. They're like, yeah, we're pretty small.
Yeah, that's cool. Oh, little Liechtenstein getting invaded by Sweden.
Yeah,
all the time. That's cool. All right, so this episode.
Wait, let me. You know what? I feel like I need to give a second one because
sure. I mean, it's only a 2-hour podcast. Why not?
Well, you know what? Because this one you're going to need a little bit of humor.
Okay.
All right. Did you know that there is a penguin, a general, a king penguin named Major Nils Anglican, or Major, whatever. Anyway, he was knighted. He's a knight.
A penguin was knighted.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was, Norway. It was a position so high that it had to be approved by the King of Norway, King Harald V. And he walked out. Look at there's a picture. Literally knighted the penguin with the sword.
They literally, for those of you that we don't have, you can't see this because it's audio, but there literally is a king of Norway putting the sword on the shoulder of the penguin
in the middle of the street.
I dub thee.
Sir Nils Olav.
They have to call him Sir.
Yeah, it's Sir. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing.
There you go. So there's a penguin that's knighted.
Freaking penguins getting knighted. I can't even get any recognition. What the heck?
Well, one of them deserves it. One of them doesn't.
Oh man, I'm abused.
Yes.
Right. Inside and out. All right. All right. Hey, so let me just give a sober warning real quick. This episode for before we get started in this, I just want people to understand that Jessi Czebotar was raised in the Illuminati. She was being groomed to take over a high-level position within the Illuminati. or the Brotherhood, as she calls it, and had experienced. She's in what we call an SRA, Satanic Ritual Abuse Survivor, and she has stories that are graphic and mature. And so I would encourage, if there's any young ears listening, that you would put earmuffs on them or send them out. And this is one of the reasons why we put explicit on our podcast, because we want people to understand this is adult and this is very real, and it's unbelievable. So I think
we should also put a disclaimer.
Yes.
That is, don't.
Yes.
I want to say, like, don't yell at us.
Yeah.
If anything you hear, and for the government listening, these are only the opinions of anyone.
Okay.
Don't come after me.
Sure.
I don't want people to kill me. That's why.
All right. All right, you guys ready? You ready?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. All right. Hey, do me a favor. You better get the largest cup you can find, but sit back and grab a cup of Kahi coffee and enjoy.
You're listening to the All Out War podcast.
Well, everybody, welcome to another episode of All Out War. We have an amazing guest with us today. I'm going to save all the introduction for her to tell her testimony because it's literally that powerful. But I want to welcome to the podcast, Jessie. Jessie, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me here.
And it has been an awesome honor to have you. Knowing that you were coming on for the last week or two, I've been just literally thinking about this because of I think this topic, the timeliness of what we're going to talk about and your experiences. I think they're going to just be. I think the timing is perfect for this, and so I'm so thankful that you took the time to join us. And why don't we start by you just sharing a little bit about your background and also. Your last name is almost impossible in the English language to pronounce. Is it Czebotar?
Close, yeah, Czebotar.
Czebotar, okay. It's spelled very differently. It's Czebotar. Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Correct.
Yeah. So we'll put links in the show notes to contact you on your website and all that stuff, how to get connected with you. But let's start by just sharing your testimony, and we'll start at that spot, okay?
Yeah. Well, I'll start by trade. I'm a fully trained hospital chaplain, and have spent the past 14 years working at that career. And my specialties up until the past 5 years were with the veterans, working at the veteran hospital, and then particularly veteran mental health with PTSD. And then I worked specialty trauma hospitals for quite a few years, and then hospice. And so that's kind of where the Lord's had my career for the past 14 years. And then about 5 years ago, the Lord started to move things and shift it in a different direction. And, there were some things happening where specifically the Lord told me that I would be sharing my testimony publicly. And that included the background of my childhood, which, for 38 years, I had never gotten to speak about any of this stuff. I couldn't, tell, even if I wanted to, nobody would listen. And I had tried to share, my story with individuals in law enforcement, individuals in the church, individuals in government, and just nobody would even, I'd say one line, my family is in the occult, or my family kills babies, and immediately I would get shut down, and nobody wanted to even ask, are you okay? Are you safe? They would just shut me completely down, and, I wouldn't get any more out. And so 5 years ago, the Lord really put a shift in that and, told me in prayer one night that I would start to share my testimony, and that it would be a very difficult road. And so I just started, praying and asking him to open the doors. So I'll go back a little bit here with that, with my story. I was born into what is considered bloodline families. And for those who may have heard the term, especially recently, that is in regards to individuals who consider themselves the Brotherhood or the Illuminati. Sometimes it's called now the Cabal or the Deep State. But when I was growing up, I knew it as the Brotherhood. And it's a, group of individuals that have cover lives where they live one way by day, one way that people see them. But, behind the scenes, they really are worshipers of Satan or Lucifer. And so with the bloodlines, it really goes all the way back to the time of the Hivites and the Canaanites. And you had this group of individuals who were the children of Cain, and they worshipped Baal and Molech, and were into blood sacrifice, killing of children, and offering their children as sacrifices to Baal and Molech. And the Lord at that time, he called Abraham out of that land because the Lord did not want him participating in those things. And so Abraham came out, and the Lord promised him, one, that he would give him a land, two, that he would make him the father of nations. So we know later on, as we study scripture, that Abraham had a son, and, as his heirs multiplied, his grandson Jacob had 12 sons. And one of those sons, Joseph, was sold into Egypt. And so when the Lord reunited that family, each of Jacob's sons were considered one of the 12 tribes of Israel. But Joseph was given 2 portions. So therefore they became 13 sons of Israel. And then what the Illuminati system has done, because they all of the bloodlines stem out of these 13 tribes of Israel, that they add a 14th heir to Abraham, and that is through Ishmael. So you've got the 14th bloodline through Ishmael, and everybody who's in this system genetically carries the DNA of one or more of these bloodlines. So I was born into that family, pretty high, very high level. My relatives were the 5 Queen Mothers of Darkness. And so the structure of this, like I described the Brotherhood kind of as a system or a company. That's the easiest way to understand it. And at the very, very top, you have Satan, who owns this company. The people he has running it and overseeing everything are the 5 Mothers of Darkness. So they are directly underneath Satan. And then under them, it stems out where you have over 300 men and women who sit on the Satanic or Druidic Council. And those people would be kind of considered the board of directors for the company. They oversee quadrants both in the United States or internationally, and they are in charge of running those quadrants for the Brotherhood system. Underneath the councilmen, you would have the grand high priest and priestesses, and each of them, are in charge of running one of the quadrants under the councilmen. And then under those individuals, it would start to break down where you have the high priest and priestesses, and that they're the ones who directly oversee the company's department stores, is kind of how I classify it, in each quadrant. So those department stores would be the Masonic lodges, the Catholic churches, the the Mormon churches, the Cabal, and the Satanists. So you've got 5 departments that those high priests and priestesses are going to be in charge of overseeing. So my family, being the Mothers of Darkness, one of my relatives was the queen, and that's whose position I was chosen and selected to succeed. And so my training began at age 4.5 for this position and continued until age 10 when I was fully trained to take that position. And before all that training began, I want to go back just a little bit. Like I said, it began at age 4.5. But at age 2, the Lord intervened, knowing what was going to happen ahead of time. And we had another relative that was a Christian started bringing me and my mother to church with him. And it was at that church that, I was the only little one in the nursery. And I had this nursery worker named Lily, and she would sit me on her lap, and she literally would open up the Bible and put it right on our laps, and she would read to me from the book of John, and she would sing hymns and little Bible songs and things like that. And, she had no idea how vital that was to, not only my survival, but the things that the Lord is now doing, because she gave me those tools as a little child. With those things, I've shared some of the stories on some of the videos that I've done where, literally I would be in a summoning circle, and this demonic spirit would be coming through and, ready to attack me or another child. And I would start singing the BIBLE song, and these demons would have to flee. They'd have to go back, from where they came. And so, that was how vital those things that she taught me were. It was the only thing that got me through the severe darkness. And she taught me how to have a basic relationship with God. Like I knew if I prayed that he was there with me. I knew when I talked to him, that he was listening. And, I didn't get, a lot of people in the system are programmed. I just went through the program. I had to learn it so that I could run it, but I was not actually programmed. So a lot of the individuals who are programmed, they're allowed different types of coping mechanisms or things they can do to self-medicate through the trauma that they're going through. But I was not afforded any of those things. Like I literally had to go through it and endure it with the Lord, and I had to learn to cope with it, with these depths of evil that, really are just unexplainable.
Wow. Okay. So that's a huge drop right there. So let me, a couple questions for you. When you were little at 2 or 3 years old, I guess you said you were, 2 or 3, you got taken to church,
Mm-hmm.
and
2.5.
2.5. Yeah. And
Yeah.
was there a moment that you remember just receiving Jesus as your Lord and Savior in that time frame?
Yeah, definitely there was. The first, there was a couple times, but the very first time I heard God's word, which was that first chapter in John, my heart actually leaped. Like I knew it was true. Lily would say, get ready, Jesus is coming. And I can remember I was just so excited. Like I left church that day and was telling everybody, everywhere we went, it was like, get ready, Jesus is coming. And I just kept repeating that. So it was a year later when I was 3 that my mom sat me down on her lap, and she had just accepted the Lord, and she explained things to me and said, would you like to ask Jesus into your heart? And I said, yes. And so I prayed and asked him to forgive my sins and come into my heart. So that happened just a year and a half before that training began.
So your mom accepted the Lord, You were a believer. How did your mom allow you to go into the training to try and put you within the circle, if she was a believer?
Yeah, she had no idea. She had experienced a lot of the abuse growing up in early childhood. And then what happened is they would tell her that she was crazy, that she had an overactive imagination. So she grew up thinking, that any memories that she had were not real things. So a lot of it at first was that she really didn't know that it really was happening. The other thing that they would do is that they would drug my family at night. So they'd come home from work and would fall asleep after dinner time and, be knocked out. So that was how they did a lot of that without either of my parents' knowledge.
So they would come and pick you up and take you away out of the house at that time?
Yep. Both for, I even would go to school in the morning and then they would take me out of school. And then my night training would happen after dinner time after my parents were asleep.
So how did you ever tell your parents what was happening? Like, didn't you feel like you should talk to them as you got a little bit older?
I did not get the opportunity to do that. There was a lot of threats. So, they would threaten that they would come into the house and slaughter everybody. And I had seen enough graphic murders already to know that, they were serious. So, I never attempted to even talk with them about it. It was later when I was about age 10 that my mother overheard me and my brother speaking about it. And at that point, we reached out to law enforcement to try to get them involved, and we're basically told to keep our mouths shut if we wanted to stay alive. And so that's, at that point it was really hard. And then actually the Lord in his grace ended up literally moving our family to another area so we were away from those relatives. So my dad got a job and we moved, and at that point was when the Lord kind of took away their access.
So so you're connected to one of these bloodline families, and do they, when they're in this grooming process where they're trying to bring, more family members in like that, are there some that are just much more aware of it and willing, or are there others that are like you where it just sort of like touches on their life in a massive way, but they are able to get out?
There are some that they allow just to live, under their regular cover lives. And as long as they're silent and don't tell anything, if their positions are not important, they don't require much of them. At the same time, some of those people, they have what we call blackout programming. So literally the system, the individual could get a phone call, or somebody could, I know this sounds way out there, but astral project at night and whisper a word in their ear, and it would trigger that programming. And they literally would, be blacked out consciously, and they would have no idea on a conscious level what they were doing or participating in. And they would just automatically show up for the ritual, do their jobs. And then when they'd wake up in the morning, they would be back in their beds and have no idea that they had participated in anything.
Wow. Is this, so this is like extreme. So there's multiple sides to this when a victim is being kind of programmed. I guess you have the spiritual side of things where there's the deceptive and the fear and all of that connects with that to the emotional side. But then you have the outside of the spiritual side, which is the threats against the family, the manipulations that come through that. So it's almost multifaceted in the way that it controls the person.
Yeah.
When after you became a Christian, and when you were saved, born again, and you were in these rituals, and you said like that evil demon came out, and you would start singing the Bible song. Was it apparent to the handlers or whoever it was that were trying to program you that you were a Christian, and did they see that, and did that affect them in any way?
Yeah, I should probably get a little bit more into my story, but I'll explain first. The individual who I was succeeding, those individuals are called proctors. So they're almost comparable to a teacher. They don't do mind control or things like that. So you make your own decisions, but this person kind of guides you in the way that you're supposed to go. And it's a lot of, you learn the position through observation. So basically, everywhere my proctor went, everything that she did, I was privy to all that evil. And her job was to do everything and teach me through observation exactly and precisely how everything was supposed to be done and performed. Handlers are individuals who operate more at the lower levels of the system, and a lot of them are more in control of either individuals who are involved in the experiments, which would be like the MK Ultra victims, or individuals who are like beta kitty sex slaves or things like that. So they basically do mind control, and they control the victim through those processes. So with this, part of my proctor's job as the Queen Mother was that every night we had to have a meeting with Satan. So it literally was just like we would. Hold on. I mean, it's so weird, I know, but
all right, hold on.
Literally, we would be sitting there, and he would appear, and we would be having a discussion with him, and he would tell us the agenda for the next day, and if there were problems, he would let us know what he was not happy with, and then our job was to make it right and to make sure that things were running exactly how he wanted it run.
Okay, hold on.
So
I gotta cut in. You would have meetings with Lucifer, like
yes.
the fallen angel, Satan. Wow.
Yeah.
And
then at times, his 7 top generals would be there as well. So Baal, Molech, Ashtaroth, Thoth.
That's
Shemish.
crazy. What?
Yeah, those guys would be there too sometimes. So.
I think Rachel has a question. I heard her mic turn on.
I wish people could see his faces.
So, can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
When this was all happening, like, how old were you when you were first, like, privy to this? And did it become, like, a regular thing, or did, like, the shock value, like, wear off after a little bit? Or I guess those are my questions, like, because just thinking about, if someone the age of my kids was exposed to this kind of thing, like, at what point is just you're so traumatized that it just becomes regular? Did you shut down the first time, and then after that it was like better, or what happened?
No, it was made regular pretty quick because of there's consequences if you break what they call posture, which I'll explain in a minute here. But I was 4.5. And so, one of the very first things that happened was that as I went through testing and they chose me for that position, there was a little boy my age that they also chose to become my training partner and my protector. So one of the very first things that we experienced together was they murdered his family. And this was in a neighborhood in Chicago, Illinois. It was at 2:00 in the morning. We both got pulled out of bed and had to get into these vehicles. He was actually at his house, when we got there. So it was me and my proctor, and we arrived and we're standing in his yard, and there was about 20 big guys in black robes who got out of the cars, and they surrounded the house and started, chanting and doing all sorts of witchcraft and spells. And, I really want to bring this out for people to understand that, this is how big this group is that they, entire neighborhoods, this stuff happens in, right out in the yard in the middle of the night. And nobody does anything. Nobody intervenes. Nobody says anything. In fact, they pretend that it never happened. So, what they did was they literally pulled out his whole family, and they had him come and stand by me and my proctor. And we were told that we had to stand there and watch, and that if we tried to intervene, if we cried out, if we showed any emotion, that it was going to be worse. And at that point, they didn't define what the worst was. And so, as we were standing there, he had a 2-year-old baby brother that they had another person come and take and left the scene. So he was not there. But then these guys held down his father and his mother and his 8-year-old sister. And his 8-year-old sister, they raped right in the yard and in front of us. And then after they did that, we all got into the cars, and they took us to a barn. And there they, in front of us, basically hung and gutted his father, his mother, and his sister. And then, the whole time, we were not allowed to do anything. And, the only thing that I could do, I could tell he stopped breathing, and I dared to reach out my little pinky and touched his pinky. And that made him start breathing again. And then after that, the next day, the news was, the police were part of this. The news was that his family had died in a severe car accident, and they had burned in the car. The gas tank had exploded, and so we, then got to briefly attend the funeral, and that was the end. Nobody ever spoke of his family again. We weren't allowed to bring it up. We weren't allowed to grieve it. They put him in the hands of the man who was pretending to be his grandfather, was one of the Nazis that had been brought in through Project Paperclip, and he was our combat trainer. And that was the man that they put him in the custody of. And, from that point on, he was known as his grandfather. So
I'm laughing because of the tension. It's just, it's the weight of the story. And I'm trying to wrap my mind around a family sacrificed, and then the one survivor being handed over to a Nazi. So, and I was going to ask you that question because you had mentioned MK Ultra, and that's a technique that we know came out around that same time of Project Paperclip and all of that, when after World War II. And is that something that they regularly practice within the Brotherhood?
Yeah. That is a very common program, and I brought out the show's temporarily been taken offline, but I brought forward the evidence about the man I just mentioned. His name was Michael Karkok, and he was the Ukrainian Legion of Defense leader for the Nazis, and was in charge of a lot of projects under the umbrella of Project Aerodynamic. But people have heard of, the Stargate project, Star Wars Now. Those are some of the names that have gone out. So Karkok was the individual who was the main trainer for both John Brennan and Michael Aquino. And then he was our trainer. So he's the one who taught those individuals the different aspects of, I call it like types of divination, witchcraft, and black magic. The military uses words like psyop and, MK Ultra or different things like that. But, it was teaching individuals how to remote view, how to astro project, how to basically do warfare solely in the spirit world without engaging in warfare in the physical world. So that was Michael Carcock's specialty.
So I was going to say, I know when you mentioned Brennan and Aquino. So I know I didn't know anything about, I never heard Brennan before, so I'm not quite sure how to respond to that. But I was going to say, Michael Aquino, I know he was, so was it basically like they had the military arm, which would be Aquino, and then the intelligence arm within the U.S. Structure, I guess. Because Michael Aquino was a general, if I'm not mistaken, and he's not in there anymore. Was he? He wasn't DARPA, but he was, and it wasn't. Was he DIA? I can't remember. But
yeah, both of them worked. So Carcock trained them. So Aquino took over the West Quadrant, both in the U.S. and internationally. Mm-hmm. So he ran all the PSYOP projects through the military dumb bases with the spiritual gates. And then Brennan was part of the CIA part, but he oversaw like the genetics, the eugenics, those aspects for the East Quadrant, and managed all the military dumb bases, and the both of them were overseeing different quadrants for the Monarch programming that was going on that interconnected with the military. Okay,
that makes sense. And I guess this is, how does the I know Aquino is a form, it's common knowledge that he's attached. Was it the OTO with not Aleister Crowley? I guess eventually, but like does that have? I would assume that like groups like that, or Crowley, or I can't think of the other guy's name.
Not Jack Parsons, but
Anton LaVey, like those kind of satanic group, that are out there in the open talking about what they do. Are those like used, or how do those groups that are outright open about like what they do, like the Satanic Temple, or with Anton LaVey, or the OTO with Jack Parsons and Crowley and all that stuff, and what they were doing, up in New Hampshire and conjuring all these things. So are they part of it, or are they like a smoke screen? Because this is where I just get.
Well, they were, some of the ones you mentioned were. So those would be like, if you're thinking the system and under departments, those are all going to fit under the Satanist department. Some of it go into the Masonic, because they also, they were Satanists, but they're also Masons. So, Aquino was a high-level York Scottish Rite Mason. He was into the OTO order, but then also he got more into the Egyptian mythology of the Masonic branches, which gets into the higher levels of the black magic with Aleister Crowley. And so with that, he set up the Temple of Set. And so he oversaw that whole order, and he split himself off from Anton LaVey, who stayed more along the philosophies of the Luciferians.
Right.
So they have a little bit different philosophies, but they're able to kind of pick and choose at that point what they're involved in and what they're not. At the higher levels, Kina was part of the Order of the Golden Dawn. I believe Brennan is part of the Order of the Phoenix, which that falls under more of the Muslim Brotherhood. So you have individuals like Obama, HRC. They fall under that category of the system.
Yeah, that seems like just like more of the left wing versus right wing political stuff is right. Exactly that.
It basically is. Yeah, it's exactly that. You have the system fighting the system.
Yeah.
So I need to go back because I got to go back to this whole seeing Satan thing. I don't want to laugh about it, but I mean, I've told this story before on the podcast. Anyone who's listened knows that I've seen angels. I know on 2, possibly 3 occasions. One was amazing. It just was brilliant, like a star shining. Followed me home in my car late at night. I went out to my house, asked it if it had a message or anything, and it didn't say anything. So I went to bed and went inside, went to bed. I actually grabbed my roommate and he saw it too, because I just thought I was going crazy. And so my roommate looked at it and he saw it. And then the other one was actually an angel that was sitting in the church by herself. It looked like an older woman, and there's a whole story around that too. But I'm trying to imagine this vision of the presence of Satan. He's obviously fallen angel. He's got some kind of presence to him, power. I mean, is it right? Did you see him often and enough to where you just knew what to expect? Were you afraid of him? Was there anything like, I'm just like, what was going through your mind at those times?
Yeah, I was not afraid of him. There were times that, the best way to describe it is there's something about him that is very alluring and drawing. And you're just drawn into the depth of darkness. And I don't know how to explain that any farther than just that, there's like that, just that being drawn to him. And, so there was that constant emotional and spiritual fight every single night where it was like, no, I'm not going to participate. No, I'm not going to do what you want me to do. I had to constantly be saying no. And then, part of that, there were a lot of consequences. Satan has a way of melding one's will to do what he wants you to do. So, absolutely every decision I had to make as a child came at the price of somebody's life. And so, I watched over 1,000 deaths a month because I was constantly saying, no, I'm not going to do that. No, and when I said that, somebody died, and it wouldn't always be instantly. It would usually be the next day, or, it'd be when I least expected it. So, one of the ways they also did it, with the consequences, me and my training partner had, I did not want to kill or take life, and he knew that, but that we would be put in situations where, they would put us in a room with adults. At first it was people who were trying to defect out of the system, and it was, either you two make it out of the room or the defector makes it out, but only, one of you gets to live. So, if we had to kill in order to get out of the room. And so my training partner early on, literally would refuse to allow me to do that. And so, later that became like a real sore spot for me because, the more decisions I made that were against Satan's will, the more Satan would target him and make him do things that, I didn't want him to have to do either. So, there were times like, when we were just doing ritual prep, which for end time rituals, that meant that we were just getting ready for, learning like what was supposed to happen, when it was supposed to happen. And a lot of it's, you practice and you have to have it perfect. So I wouldn't fight the ritual prep. I would go through that and learn everything that I was supposed to. I would memorize, the black magic, the different books that had to be memorized. But then, when there were rituals where life had to be taken, that's where I would say no. And so I had to, make those hard decisions at that young age. I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I don't want to dwell on it. I don't even like glorifying, him at all. So, which is kind of contradictory to this whole podcast episode. But okay, so let's talk. I want to move into a different direction a little bit. So one of the things that you're trying to do is you're trying to help people leave the brotherhood to understand that there is a way out. Obviously without Christ, there's no way you would have made it out. I can't imagine you standing before Satan and not being, without Christ being the one that would stand between the two of you, Yeah. I just can't imagine any other way. So that's incredible. Like that's the answer really for anyone. But when we talk about, and one of the things that too you're passionate about is helping for all these children, this human trafficking.
Yeah.
This is a big topic right now. It obviously, it's become more and more in the mainstream. A few years ago, when Pizzagate was talked about, it was laughed about and called a crazy conspiracy theory. And now we're discovering all of these underground trafficking, and even to the point of where drug cartels have moved from doing drugs to human trafficking because it's more profitable. Is the human trafficking problem, especially with those that are that we're finding now connected, like for instance, Epstein and that whole realm of names and the books and the Hollywood and all that, is that connected to this the brotherhood and the circle and the whole pyramid of authority and all that you were just talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. The majority of those big names that we're hearing, especially in politics, are high priest or priestesses or grand high priest and priestesses for the different quadrants. Some of them are satanic councilmen. So I've talked on one of my shows, I shared how Obama had just succeeded Soros as the phoenix of the council, and that means that Obama now sits at the top seat on the Satanic Council.
Wow.
So a lot of these people are underneath that. It's all interconnected. So you have like a lot of the names that we're hearing are people that I would call hierarchy children. So they were born and bred and brought up in the system to take certain positions in order to keep the system running. So they've all learned a job, and their job has been to keep that going for the system. The kids that, the other set of kids are the system's assets. So those are the children that they make their money off of. We've talked a little bit about, before the show, about how much money one of these kids brings the system. We're talking high levels of money. So, let's just say one child, first the system will make money off the child using them as a sex slave. Then when they're done with them for that, whoever is paying money for that child has the option, they can harvest organs, they can get adrenochrome from the child, they can pay more money to ritually kill the child, or pay more money to cannibalize the child. When they're done with that avenue of money, the children are put through after they're dead, they're put into incinerators. And people can look this up. You can search funeral homes and look for memorial diamonds. And you can see that within a 24 to 72-hour period, it's possible to turn the ashes of somebody into a diamond. So this is how the Vatican got a lot of their money. All the Catholic churches have incinerators underneath them in the basement. So after they were done using the children, they would just turn them into ashes and incinerate them into diamonds, which then whoever's paying the money could either keep the diamond as a trophy diamond, or they put it on the market and sell it to department stores or other places as specialty diamonds. So this is where we start to get into some of the specialty colored diamonds. With that, the public also buys into the system. We pay for these things. After they're done with that, there's still ashes from the bones left over. Those are ground up and sold to our food companies. And it's sold as a filler for food or pharmaceuticals and goes into our prescription medications or into our food. And there again, the public pays into the system for those things. So each child, it's estimated they at least get at least $2 million for each child.
Whoa.
And, a lot of the children, we had over 800,000 this past year just through CPS that went missing in the USA alone. But that's not the bulk of the children that they get. The bulk of the children they have underground breeder programs. So this is where they put girls into these breeder program systems, and at least once a year they have a child that is bred for ritual sacrifice or bred to be one of these asset children. And those children have no names, no birth certificates. Nobody ever knows they were alive or that they died.
Okay. All right. Okay. We're going to come back to that because I've got to think on that a little bit because what I'm listening to you talk, but I'm also I'm writing notes. I don't know if you noticed, and I've got a million questions that I'm gonna pepper you with a array of questions at the end here. We've got time. Do you have a little bit more time?
Oh yeah, definitely. We can go as long as you need to.
Oh, good. Okay, good. Because so let's turn towards the government for just a second. You had mentioned Brennan and the other guy. What was the other guy's name?
Michael Aquino?
Yeah, Aquino. Brennan's still pretty active in the government. I mean, I've seen his name in the news and all. What's his role in this whole thing?
Yeah, well, he was one of the two individuals who oversees all of the what I would call the military interfacing between the governments and the world leaders. So, his primary role was to prepare individuals in those training programs for end time programming, which involves opening the spiritual gates. I'll explain that just a little bit more. So with that, Satan has had one agenda, which is that he, thoroughly believes he can usurp the throne of God and become God. But he needs a way to do that. He's able to go into the throne room daily and has to ask permission for everything that he wants to do. But he can't bring his demonic hordes into the heavenlies, into the throne room. So part of these experimental programs that Aquino and Brennan were working is working through the spiritual gates or portals that go into the heavenly realms, and they need human hosts for the demonic spirits. When they have those connections and they can get the spiritual gates open, Satan's agenda is to funnel his demonic hordes through the heavenly gates into the throne room of God using human hosts. So that's what a lot of these hidden government experiments that Brennan and Aquino were working on revolved around. That's something right now I'm working with individuals to try to bring forward, have the government release those projects and the experiments because they committed crimes against children. They would use things like adrenochrome. Both Brennan and Aquino would not only naturally procure that and proof it, but they would force it. I was one of the individuals that they forced it on. And they would use adrenochrome as a means to heighten spiritual gifts so that you were, seeing, hearing, and feeling more clearly in the spirit world for these projects. They do that also with the military. There's a lot of military individuals who have had been subjected to these same things under Aquino and Brennan.
So you mentioned adrenochrome. There's a lot, I looked on the internet to try and find information about it. And the first thing that came up was a conspiracy about it. The next couple things that came up were really a scientific formulation, like a chemistry outline of it. Can you explain adrenochrome a little bit more? Because I have heard everything from it's the most highly addictive drug ever that anyone's ever taken to it is the fountain of youth. And now what you just mentioned for sure was that it heightens spiritual awareness. Can you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah. Well, they would procure two things. So you have adrenochrome, which comes from the adrenal glands, and that most people would know as the fight or flight hormone. So when you have it it's natural for the body to have that hormone. But what happens is when you have an extreme excess of it, it goes beyond you just having heightened senses or awareness or, spiritual acuity to you enter into a psychosis. And on that psychosis, people, do really horrible, the best way I can explain it is everything in you that is evil, every evil thought you could ever have just bombards you, and you don't have the mental control on it to be able to tell yourself no. You just react. You can't really think. You're having these thoughts, you don't want to do that, but you just act on impulse. So that's in its highest form. So the other one are the hormones that come out of the pineal gland. So what they would do is they would procure these, and they don't have to kill their victims to get these two hormones. They had ways of doing that, the methods I saw were ancient traditional ways of procuring it that were passed down, from old centuries. So they would procure it or get it from the victim, and then they would proof it almost like a tincture. And so they would either proof it in formaldehyde, which would make it, that is the tincture they would use when they were specifically wanting a psychosis reaction. So a lot of the Hollywood stars or elites, when they're at these rituals, that's the time they would use that type of proof. They just want to let loose and do whatever they need to do and not even think about it. So that's when they would take that type of drug. The other types were, they would proof it in a vodka, and they would have different percentages. And so they would test even from, my testing was early on. So they would know how much they could give you in exact calculated amount before you would hit that psychosis. So the majority of these individuals, like who are in our politics or government, they're what I call like adrenoholics, where they are so used to having a calculated daily amount of adrenochrome. You know, it heightens everything. It gives them that youthfulness, that they're in that go, go, go mode all the time. They get a lot done. You know, they're able to function. But if you cut it, then they go through severe withdrawal and their body can't function. Part of the thing with them taking it on a regular basis from an outside source is that their adrenals stop producing it naturally on demand. So some of them, you know, have very severe or even fatal reactions if that dose gets stopped. So
all these, there was, you know, a couple months ago, there was all this talk. Like we've mentioned on here, we're not a big QAnon follower group, but we watch and observe what's going on there. And there was all of these things talking about how Trump was going to cut the adrenochrome flow to Hollywood and all of this, and all of these actors were struggling through. And then you would see pictures of people like Ellen DeGeneres, and there's some suspicion around guys like Tom Hanks and individuals like that, and they just look like they've been through hell. I know makeup. I mean, they kind of are touching hell. So, but I know makeup does a lot for these actors and actresses. But you know, and stylists and all. But is that true? Is there truth to that? That there was possibly some kind of supply that was cut off from these people that were lower level?
Yeah, I do believe that a major part of their supply was cut off. So you did see a lot of things that were reminiscent of what I experienced when individuals, you know, went through adrenal withdrawal. One of the things that happens is that your body's so used to working at fast mode that you burn all your potassium. So when you go through these withdrawals, you know, if you don't have a proper like you have to take mass amounts of potassium. But if you don't have that, then you get symptoms from the electrolyte imbalance as well. And that can cause really weird things to happen. You know, like I had one time, you know, my potassium dropped and my eyesight, I lost my eyesight for 3 days. Like I couldn't see anything except for my hand right in front of my face. And then as soon as I got my potassium back up, my eyesight came back to perfect 20/20. So, you know, it's just, you get really weird things that happen. But yeah, I would, you know, from what I saw, I believe that many of those people, or even the weird, you know, we saw Merkel and HRC had the weird where they, you know, were jerking weird and stuff like that. And I felt that was from a massive potassium drop because of the adrenal withdrawal.
So I had heard that when HRC had all like the shake, like the most famous videos.
It looked like she was having seizures.
Yeah, when she was walking down the stairs and everyone was trying to help her get into the SUV back. Someone told me that this is crazy, I think, but someone told me that it's not crazy because it's probably true. But that when there is I think it's a parasite that you can develop from being a cannibal. And they had discovered a tribe in some South Indian Ocean island that many people had this same exact reactions. They were like the convulsing, looked like seizures. They traced it back to this parasite as a result of eating human flesh. And I'm not accusing HRC necessarily. I'm not putting it out of the realm from everything I've heard. And I'm still waiting for Frazzle Drip to come out so we can see if that's true. If I'm being honest with everyone here, I want to be proven that it's wrong because I believe it. What do you think about that?
Well, I'll start with the Kuro disease. that is very possible. Usually, though, if it is from that, you would see it continue because once you start with the seizures and the convulsing, your health quickly and rapidly declines, and there would be a lot more day-to-day evidence that that's what she was experiencing. There's a possibility of that, so I don't lead that out either. It could be either or, but what I saw happening, because it seemed like there were, I wouldn't say every appearance I've seen of HRC has been her, but the ones that I believe have been her, you see where she's functioning normally again, and it's months after that event. So that's what leads me to believe more that it was, electrolyte imbalances and stuff to do with the adrenal and the pineal gland hormones than the chiro, but it could be both and. With the other thing, though, remind me what the second topic was. I just blinked on it. It was really good. Oh, no, I remember you were talking about the...
cannibalism?
Well, just the frazzle drip, the video, the proof. Yeah.
So with that, I was eyewitness to at least 30 of her murders that were exactly the same. So when I saw the video, each of these hierarchy people have what we call a signature killing, and that means that is they don't kill the exact same way every time, but it means that the majority of the time that's the way they like to do things. So that movie or video was exactly, what I knew as to be her signature. I could so beyond identifying it from her signature way that she likes to kill, which included they put the child into a scalding hot shower first. That is to loosen the skin. And then from there, even from the side that she tore the flesh and everything, that was exactly the way I'd seen her do it before. And then voice recognition, so I'm personally, from the version I saw on the dark web, I would say 100% yes, that was her, and she is guilty of that. But we're waiting to see it come out. I wish it wasn't true, but sadly, I say it is. So,
do you? Where's Trump in all this?
Right now, Trump is one of the individuals that received my testimony and all the evidential stuff, locations, names, tangible evidence. So, as I turned that stuff over to them, I've seen him in operation with the military doing stuff in the underground, hitting all the underground bases, things like that in areas where I know, they have training centers or a lot of occultic activity. So I fully believe he's fighting this, and have seen a lot of evidence of that. If he wasn't, even, I look at the stuff that just recently is coming out this week, with the Bidens and stuff like that. If Trump was not in that fight, there is no way that information would have ever been released, ever. It would have been so hidden. So, I'm confident that, there is something that his administration is doing to work on this. And, I do believe that there are a few good Marines who have been behind him and behind this movement, who really are the backers and the ones, because of what they saw, really were like, we need to end this. We need to end the trafficking. We need to step up for the children of our country and our nation. And we need to put a stop to this.
Yeah. I've got more questions. I don't want to dominate you guys. Rachel, did you have a question? I thought I heard your mic turn on a second ago.
No, I have. I've just seen different things, kind of confirming what you're talking about, Jessie. Where, and some of these things I wish I had screenshotted. I feel like I have. My screenshots are like a mess right now. But you know, I've seen different adrenochrome, like human source inventories, and I've seen different articles where, you know, people are coming across human baby remains in like capsules and whatnot, just like weird stuff. But everyone's like, oh, that's a conspiracy theory. Like, that stuff's just not true. And it doesn't matter if there's photographic evidence. It doesn't matter if, you know, you actually have the document. Like, some people just don't even want to touch that realm because it sounds too far off. And yet your testimony sounds so much like similarities between other people who've experienced other things like this. So a lot of it, even though it's very disturbing, it's not surprising to me. Mm-hmm. I'm just wondering how you're okay. Like, I'm just wondering if you're, you know, you've since, you know, gone to therapy or something, or if you've since like been able to really talk this kind of stuff out. And, you know, there's a really good book that people have been recommending to me, but I haven't read it yet. It's called The Body Keeps the Score, where you can carry physical trauma in your body, whether in your joints, your nerves, your spine. Like, have you experienced a lot of physical trauma, not just emotional trauma, from experiencing these things? And how have you healed or been in the process of?
Yeah, well, first I give complete all glory to the Lord, because I wouldn't be here or even be able to coherently discuss any of these things without the Lord.
Amen.
You know, I had nobody to turn to, nobody to talk to about this as a kid, nor through the majority of my adult life. So I really just had just the Lord alone. And it's kind of interesting how God chose to, you know, get me to this point. But one of the major individuals that the Lord indirectly put into my life was Corrie ten Boom. And so I had come across her books, you know, early on. I think our church library had it. And I just, you know, I fell in love with the way that she talked to the Lord, because it was it so resonated. It was so much like me. She, you know, she'd argue with God. If you get past her book, The Hiding Place, and into some of her other works, you know, she literally has these arguments with God. And I'd be sitting there like, this is me. Like, this is, I sit there and argue with God, you know? And so I really connected with her, and it was through her books and her writing about her relationship with God that really got me through a lot of hard stuff. And, you know, the stories that she talked about going through Ravensbrück in the concentration camp, in a lot of ways really were very similar to things that I had to go through. You know, so like she talked about, you know, like standing in line with all these women, and they all had to be stripped naked and searched and stuff like that. And, you know, that resonated with me, because there were times, you know, where I had to be in rooms where, you know, everybody was naked and performing sex magic or harming children. You know, it had just become like a thing where you get desensitized to it. You know, you just know that's what they're doing. And, you know, so things like that kind of really resonated with me. But then she would talk about, you know, how the Lord, what the Lord did through those times. So for her, you know, here she was completely naked, and they had to confiscate a Bible into the camp with them. And there's nowhere to hide that Bible. You know, she just had to boldly put it around her neck, and she said, Lord, hide me.
Wow.
And then she tells how, you know, the person in front of her was searched, the person behind her was searched, and it was literally as though they didn't even see her. And she had that Bible just hanging there right around her neck, you know. And so I witnessed and experienced the lot of miracles like that too. And so she was one of the people, the Lord brought me a lot of healing in hearing her stories and being able to connect to the spiritual aspect of those at a higher level.
Yeah.
And then, some of the things, to be honest, I have not been through any therapy for this. And really, a lot of my shows, especially with Good Dog and David Zublik, those are first time raw processing. So that's the first time I've ever vocalized any of those things that I'm sharing. And so the audience, it's like I'm just sharing it with people as the Lord leads me to share. There's some things that, both me and my training partner have just decided we're going to leave buried with Jesus. Adrenochrome was one of those things that we were like, we're leaving that buried with Jesus. Like, we did not want to even think about that. We didn't even want to discuss amongst ourselves the horrible trauma we went through with that. But then the Lord ended up, as I brought out the truth about Michael Karkock's involvement in the Nazis, and then Brennan and Aquino, the Lord told me that I had to bring forward the adrenochrome with that, because people needed to understand how they were using it, especially with the veterans, and that these men were guilty in using that as crimes against children and humanity. And so I had to really surrender that to the Lord. And, the first video I did on that with David, the night before, like I was like shaking because, like I had never whispered a word of it to anybody, and I had to have people keep telling me that night to breathe. Like all my prayer partners were like, you're going to be fine sharing about this, God's got you and it's going to be fine. And I was like, I don't know how I'm going to even put it into words, because some of this stuff I don't even have words to describe the depths of evil or what was done. Like, there's just not words. And one of the things that got me through was my training partner's snarky attitude. And he was like, I'm really glad you're talking about this. And I was like, why? Why? Like, this stuff should never be told, right? And he's like, well, so it's so I don't have to. And I was like, oh, you jerk, you're a jerk. And then he brought up, like, he was joking back, and he was like, you puked on me, because when we would come down off of the adreno, it makes you really nauseous, and I would be throwing up. And one of the times we were locked in a cupboard together coming down off, and I threw up all over him. So he threw that in my face and was like, you puked on me. But that at least gave me a little laugh, so that the next day when I had to talk about it, I had to just keep thinking about, that good conversation between us to get through that talk. And it was really hard to get through that.
Well, the healing of the Lord too is so complete. And Rachel, when you were talking about the how the human body can hold it, I started thinking, we have a good friend of ours who's a believer, and he's also one of the leading epigeneticists in the world. And he was talking about how at an epigenetic level, the Holy Spirit actually works in people's lives and heals and restores, and through deliverance and all kinds of amazing things that you wouldn't normally think about from that level. But that's a great question, Rachel. I don't know how you could come out and have a coherent. I don't know how you could function with the knowledge of what you have, because this is what is so many people are blinded by. They're blinded from, I should say. They don't see clearly in the spiritual realm the way that, even though we read our Bibles, and many people are even in churches that are more spiritually open, like some of the charismatic movements or whatever, where they might experience, demonic possessions or oppressions or whatever you want to call it. There's still so much that we don't see and understand. But I wanted to ask you a question. I've got four that I wrote down here. Okay, so I'm gonna throw these at you. Number one, you mentioned stargates, like gates that were possibly located in these domes, these deep underground military bases, and that they were trying to set up. Is that something also that you could say would probably be this big hadron collider out in what's in Switzerland?
Are you talking about CERN?
Yeah, CERN. Is that
CERN is directly connected. Both CERN, DARPA, HARP, they all oversee different aspects of the spiritual gate.
Okay, and so that would make sense why they have that big Vishnu statue outside of, and they did that whole ritual. So if they get into one of these gates, I mean, like in my mind, I think about this, and God is just so much greater and so much stronger, and He's all knowing. He knows what's going on. Nothing's hidden from Him. I mean, the scriptures say that He sees everything. He's omniscient. He's omnipresent. He's omnipotent. So when they try and break through one of these star gates or these gateways, and to try and allow these demonic hordes to go through, do they honestly believe that they can attack God at His throne room and have victory? Couldn't He just, from the mouth of His, couldn't He just think it and it be done? Like they would vaporize? It's like
Babel.
Yeah. One, they do truly believe that, Satan believes he will become God. He's very delusional in that. But you're right, the battle's already won. We're already told that we overcome him by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony.
Yeah.
And then, we're told there is only one God, that Jesus' job is to submit all things under the Father's feet. And so that will be done, including, you've got God's kingdom, the kingdom of light. You also, what we see happening is we've got this kingdom of darkness, which for a period of time is going to be placed under the Antichrist's hands. But what's going to happen then is, as the Antichrist and Satan try to usurp that throne room, Jesus will claim his victory in the authority of his name, and every tongue shall confess, every knee shall bow, and everything, both the kingdom of light and darkness, will be laid at the Father's feet. So we already know the end outcome, that, Satan's not going to win.
So in the end times thing, you just mentioned the Antichrist. Do you think we're pretty close to the end right now? I mean, I feel like we are. 2020, honestly, we do this podcast. We've been doing it for a couple of years, and every week that we come on, we could literally just talk about the current events, like what happened this week, if we really wanted to, and we would have like some kind of weirdness to it. The the pandemic or the plandemic, whatever you want to call it, the Great Reset. I mean, the New World Order, is that all? The New World Order, is that the Brotherhood ultimately?
Yeah, that's Satan's agenda. The Brotherhood basically is in charge of running Satan's kingdom. So,
gotcha.
Through the physical realm,
right?
So it lines up with that the system's job is to give headship to the Antichrist, who's in their eyes, the Messiah, who's supposed to come. And then their Messiah's job is to put everything under the control of Satan, or the beast, as Revelation calls him.
So you think we're pretty close to that happening? You think that?
I do. Yep. I think we are. I watch Israel. There's, a lot that is coming up on there. So, we already see they've got plans not only for the city of Babylon to be rebuilt. That's actually in the process. They've got the third Temple Mount that they're building. This past year, actually, there were 2 red calves that were born, red heifers, and those have not been born for centuries. They have not had a pure red heifer, which is required for the temple sacrifices for Israel priests. So two of those were born, and then we're starting to see all the signs and wonders in the skies. We've had all the blood moons, the blue moons, the different things going on. So all of those things, tell us that God's word is progressing just as he's foretold it will. And, he tells us that when we see those things coming, we know then that the kingdom of God is at hand.
Yeah. Do you?
So I believe we're very close. I pray that we have 3 more years. That's kind of how I put it. I'm praying for 3.
Wow.
But
so you?
I don't know.
All right. So 2 questions. So you're praying for 3. Does that means that in your opinion, the Antichrist is much closer than we might understand?
Yeah, I think he's very close.
Wow. And do you believe in a rapture?
I'm not somebody who technically believes in one. With the scriptures, there's only one passage really that I think supports a pre-trib rapture, and that would be in the book of Thessalonians, where I think it's chapter 2 or 3, where it talks about the Holy Spirit being taken.
Yeah.
And so technically, if the Holy Spirit is gone, it would be really difficult to have Christians here because, we're indwelt by the Spirit of God. And I don't believe that the Lord would remove his Spirit from us.
Right.
So, that would imply that there has to be a rapture before the tribulation. But besides that chapter, all the other ones, I believe, support more of a post-tribulation, where the rapture occurs at the return of Christ. So I'm somebody who says, boy, I'm praying we get that rapture. But if not, I think we better be prepared to go through the tribulation, because it's going to be a rough time for people to put all their money or their bank on a pre-rapture. If they're not ready, how are you going to get through those difficult times?
Yeah.
If you're not prepared for them.
Yeah.
So
I'm encouraged though that that God's mark is going to be on us, like those who are redeemed. We have his mark on us.
That's right.
So I know that there's a lot of people who are worried that they're going to be duped into getting the mark of the beast, but you're not. I think if you're aware that you have God's mark on you, then you're not going to accidentally get it. But you just have to be extremely aware of everything and, be testing everything, discerning everything. But I'm kind of like either or. I see some things that could support it. I see some things that, might indicate that there's only one trumpet when he returns. But at the same time, I'm not really worried because we probably haven't gone through horrible stuff, like in America at least.
No.
The other people have been around the world. And the tribulation is going to be really bad, but if we have God's mark on us, at least will we be easier to spot out and die sooner, or, or we could be protected? You know what I mean? Like, I'm not worried. I'm more worried about, like, making sure that I am teaching and instructing my children now.
Yeah.
And the people that I know, like, I have more of a fire under me to, like, be explaining these concepts to my children. Like, my children are 4 and 2, and we talk about it every day. We talk about Jesus every single day. Yeah. So that's something where I'm not worried about what's going to happen to me, because I know that I'll probably be the first one that they knock off. But at the same time, that's just even sooner. Like, I get to go to heaven even sooner, or be with him even sooner.
Right. I agree. Scripture tells us too to be anxious for nothing. And
That's right.
so this falls under the category, that we're to be strong and courageous. We're not to tremble or be afraid, because God is with us. No matter what happens or where we go, he's always with us. So we can trust that and know that in each moment he's going to give us exactly what we need to get through that moment.
What do you think about and I'm just picking your brain. So, and if you don't have a real opinion about it, just say I don't really know. But what do you think about the COVID and this whole pandemic? Because it feels like it's fabricated. And do you think this is all part of, like, is this a ritual? Like, is this part of an agenda?
Like with the masks and everything, and like all the blatant ritualistic stuff that goes around, something that's the flu.
Yeah, yeah, right. The flu.
Let's be honest, like the less deadly flu, and there's all this other stuff.
Well, I'll say from my personal experience, not once in a ritual did I ever see nor experience having to wear a mask.
Huh.
Cool.
I'll just put that out there. There never was any face coverings on anybody that I saw. However, some of the other aspects are very connected to ritual. So you see, especially with the Antifa, the Black Lives Matters groups, you see this gathering of people. And with that gathering, you get this intense emotion, which creates a frequency. The spiritual gates operate off of frequency, harmonics, light. So, like when you see this gathering and everybody's chanting, they're all doing the same movements, that's very reminiscent of ritualistic black magic.
Yep.
It's what I call the witchy force, okay? So I see all these all over in these big cities where, you definitely have a strong occult standing, so like, we saw Seattle had CHOP. We saw a place by the Alamo. Mm-hmm. And now I don't know if you guys caught the photos, but some of those places, they had pictures where the protesting groups, not the good protesters, but the bad ones, started putting bloody handprints outside on buildings. Well, that's what we call a ritual wall. So those are ritual walls to Molech. They represent sacrifices. So usually those are hidden below ground. So this is the first time that those are being seen with actual handprints above ground. Like you would see like fabricated or made up ones, like a lot of children's hospitals will have long hallways with the kids' handprints on them, or different government buildings would, but you don't see the actual child handprint. So that was something with these areas, was that basically these groups were making them ritual ground by doing that. So have there been rituals during this? Absolutely. And are people plausibly being initiated without their foreknowledge? I would say absolutely. The chanting, the saying certain mantras, all of that, to be initiated, all you have to do is, you don't even have to give your blood. I mean, you just have to come into agreement. Usually they partake with something, they eat something or drink something, and then they recite back, a core belief of whatever they're agreeing to. So even just, taking food together and then repeating, Black Lives Matters right there, they've just been initiated into that system and aren't even aware that they just went through a low-level initiation.
Yeah, I was going to say, we did I think we did a pod, was it 2 weeks ago, about all the black magic stuff that is very blatant with the Black Lives Matter and stuff. And that was one thing that really struck out to me was, the repetition of, I mean, this might sound super controversial, but like a worthless chant, like, because it's worthless in the sense that nobody there believes in the same, whatever, that's a whole thing. But like the ritualistic chant, and then it was, I want to say it was this week or last week, like since we did, so within the last 2 weeks, where they had that guy that went up and, like, I want to say it was maybe last weekend, and he, like, they have him on camera, and he, like, has, like, a cow's heart or something like that.
And he, like, ripped it?
And he ripped it up and
Yeah.
started eating it and, like, started chanting in the middle of, like, this big circle.
And there was, like, a fire. He caught on fire. He caught his leg on fire by
Oh,
accident.
did he?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't see all that. But
It was a ritual. I mean, it was like...
I mean, it's getting...
I always look at it as, like, a manifestation. They're just manifesting.
Yeah, I mean, half of these people that you see online, I mean, not even on, you know, like, in person, because I would never go near any of these people.
Right.
I think the stink is a good indicator that when you're coming
smell.
up on them. But yeah, they look like, these people that are doing this look straight up demon possessed. Like, I think that this is like, the evidence, if you want to go look at pictures of these
Yeah.
hordes of
Well, just look at their
people,
mug
they-
shots.
Yeah, the
Like-
mug shots look evil. Like, there is definitely. So I was just wanting to say, like, more to people. Like, it's graduated from doing this stuff that maybe you might be like, that's a little out there. You guys are reading too much into it. To literally eating a heart and doing this chanting stuff. This is.
And
this
we
is
talked
real.
about the witches too. They're the witches that are casting spells on Trump. You know, they're literally on Fox News.
Yeah.
Like, you know, being interviewed by Tucker Carlson. Like, it's in the open more than it ever has been. And that's, to me, maybe I'm wrong. And is this just a sign of their boldness or their desperation? Which one do you think?
It's not desperation. You know, we're at war, so, you know, them coming forward is something that they do during times of war.
Okay.
So literally, they're declaring their position and making a strong statement that they're, you know, going to oppose face to face. So
when you mentioned the demonic hordes, last week we had our good friend L.A. Marzulli. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He's done he's just done a ton of research. He's like an old school truther and believer. He's been, you know, he's probably got saved in his 30s. He's almost 70 now, but he has done tons of research on the Nephilim, and his belief, and mine too, more recently, was that the Nephilim were the offspring of the fallen angels and the women from Genesis 6, and that they were the demons were the result of the disembodied souls of these Nephilim that died either in the flood or through the combats of the wars of overtaking the land from Joshua and the tribes. And even further out, even when David, like when he killed Goliath, there would be a disembodied soul. Is that your opinion also, or are we off?
Well, I wouldn't say you're off. You know, some of it is undefined territory, but, you know, my understanding too is that, you know, there were this offspring from the fallen angels and the human women, you know, and those were the giants, or what people called the Nephilim. But where I kind of differ, you know, I mean, I have to go off my experience. So, you know, I directly was in meetings with, you know, Baal and Molech and Ashtaroth, and, you know, it's like those were not Nephilim, you know, those were actual demonic generals who were running Satan's army. Even some of the commanders like Chemesh and Gilgamesh and stuff,
Oh my gosh.
you know, those were people I directly interfaced with. So, you know, for me, they're very real, and I can't say that they were just, you know, souls of some long lost humans. So that's probably the only aspect where I would differ is, you know, I've experienced direct demonic attacks, and, you know, scripture tells us that when, you know, we come into those attacks, or when we see somebody who's possessed, that, you know, we have the authority in Christ's name to rebuke those demons and to cast them out. So when I rebuke, those demons are cast out. So that's what leads me to believe that they are demonic spirits versus the Nephilim. You know, not once in scripture, you know, all through the book of Joshua or the books of Kings, which are big about talking about, you know, those giants in Israel, conquering those kingdoms. you don't ever see or hear them rebuking those beings. You know, there's the physical aspect where they're literally able to be at war and kill those beings. And that's after the flood. So,
Right.
So that's the part where it's kind of, you know, I think there's different theories out there, and we can't really say which one for sure it is at this point in time.
Yeah. Well, we do know the Nephilim are real, or were real, because the Bible talks about them.
We can say they're real.
Yeah. And we
That's
do.
right. They are real.
And we know demons are real because Jesus rebuked them and cast them out and gave us authority in his name with them as well. Cool. Hey, Rosie, do you have a question you wanted to talk at all? Ask anything?
No, I think we
Okay.
sort of-
All right.
Oh, you know what? This might be totally out there, but I love asking about this just because it's so weird. So you can totally say this is weird. I don't want to talk about that, or it's completely off base. But one of the first people, I guess, that got me into, I don't know, I don't want to say conspiracy theories, but this way of thinking was many, years and years ago, was David Icke. And he talks a lot about like so I don't want to say, maybe we don't want to talk about UFOs and aliens or anything. I think, at least for me, and I think I speak for everyone else, at least on this side, is that aliens or any of that kind of stuff are all demonic, activity being misconstrued or coming through some other weird way for whatever type of thing. But as far as like the reptilian aspect of these elite people having, I don't want to say like different physical bodies, but almost that they're not a different species, but there's something else that is, I don't know how to say it without, like, are they reptilians? Is there, this kind of aspect where they can, are physically different?
You want me to make it easy for you?
Yeah.
Jessie, do you believe there are...
I love this question.
I don't know how to say it.
So this is right up my alley.
Perfect.
So it's kind of easy to explain. One, it is all demonics. There is nothing in particular different or special about the bloodline.
Okay.
There are some different things with the breeding. So, we're talking here, these bloodlines have been breeding for centuries. So they are very aware of genetics, everything with the DNA coding. They specifically breed people for certain DNA spiritual gifts, certain aspects, certain traits, things like that. So with that, you've got a lot of that is happening in the MK Ultra programs. So that's one part of that. And John Brennan, like I said, he's really big into the genetics and that type of experimentation. As to the blood itself, there isn't anything, but some people have said, everybody who's Rh negative, that proves that you've got this reptilian bloodline.
Yeah.
It doesn't. What they're speaking of is what the families would call it, is that you've got children that come from the original, or carry that genetic code for that Nephilim bloodline. So when God sent the flood, Noah's son's wives were individuals who came out of that land of Canaan and all carried that Nephilim DNA recessively. So as, they started repopulating, you would get instances where, an individual would get both those recessive genes and they would have those Nephilim characteristics to them. So, the bloodline families are very keen on watching for who has those and for breeding specifically to try to get as many of those original Nephilim traits as possible. Not because they want to recreate the Nephilim, but it's because God, when he sent that flood, he took away the fallen angel's ability to have offspring.
Mm-hmm.
So their hope is to create individuals who have as much of that angelic DNA as possible. So that's what they've been doing all these years. With that, you've got a whole different subject when you get into the characteristics and the changing. I never saw an individual take on what people would describe as a reptilian form. I did see Satan, I would see him in his human form. I would see him in his spirit form. And then he also had 2 dragon forms that he would appear in. So I did see him take that dragon form. But, I never saw a person turn into a dragon or a reptilian.
Yeah.
What I did see, though, is you've got this select group of individuals who serve the elites, who are their protectors or assassins. And there's 2 groups in there where you've got bloodlines. The one bloodline we call the wolves or the werewolves. The other ones we call the vampires. When those individuals, they come from very old families. So like the vampires come through the line of Romanov. The werewolves come through the line of Rasputin. Both of them go all the way back to Vlad the Impaler or Dracula. That was kind of where the 2 bloodlines split, was during Vlad's period where he reigned. With that, at age 5, the children that are born into this family take a special oath with the familiar spirit that their family inherits. And I call those spirits changeling spirits. They have the ability to change the person's physical appearance upon demand. So, at age 5, they take an oath. From what I had understood for ages was that once they take that oath, there's no getting out of it. It's comparable to your blood oath with Satan. But I did have, I have a friend who's come out who was a wolf. And so I had asked him, I was like, how in the world did you get free from that spirit? And he was like, well, I rebuked it in Jesus' name. And I was like, why? Why did I not think that was a possibility? So that's how, in my world, that's how I grew up understanding those things. So I've heard people's stories about, Queen Elizabeth changing in front of them or Prince Philip. They never changed in front of me. I never experienced them in those forms. But was very aware of their high levels, occultic activity and the depravity that they went through that. But so I wouldn't say it's not possible.
Right.
I mean, if it can manifest looking to a wolf to someone, I'm certain it probably could manifest looking like a dragon or a reptilian to others,
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, thank you for indulging me on that.
Okay, I got a couple more questions for you. I have some names that I want to throw out to you, and I'm just curious your thought on these individuals. I'm going to start with an easy one. The first one is Chelsea Clinton. Is she in the Brotherhood?
She's in.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's what I thought. I mean, I've seen her tweets to this Church of Satan and all that nonsense. So, do you think that she's trying to poise herself for some political career?
I don't per se. She could end up doing that, but that was not her major programming. That she go into that field. So it could go that way, but
yeah,
that wasn't what I grew up knowing she would do. So
okay. Britney Spears, is she?
Yeah, she's in. I fully believe she has been trying to get out.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was my big question because a lot of these entertainers started off in the church as believers, especially these musicians, and they go into the music industry and something happens. They get some, I don't know how it works. I'm not sure how it happens, but then all of a sudden over the course of a couple years, they become a completely different person. But they also have all this fame and all this wealth and all of that. So she...
Yeah, they go through the programming when they're younger. I've talked about how Disney was one of the main influences for a lot of these individuals. So basically, you know, they would go through the mind control program as children.
Like the Mickey Mouse Club and stuff.
You know, you got to remember that they're... Yeah, and, you know, in that, you're literally trained to live two different lives. You're two different people. You live your cover life, and then you have your occultic life, which you never show anybody the occultic life, except for those who are in your occultic circle. So that's what we see happening is that, you know, while they're going through this training and being programmed, you know, we just see their good, wholesome cover life, which is made to make it look like there's nothing that you could link them to anything evil. You know, it's purposely done that way. But then when they come out, you know, they're adults, like they're going from what they were trained to do to being moved into their positions and doing what they were trained to do. Mm-hmm. So that's where we start to see that shift and that change, because now they're operating fully in their occultic position, doing what they were trained to do.
So when you see like Rosie, when you see like these Super Bowl halftime shows with, it seems to be very, and like the Olympics as well, they did like the opening ceremony. And are these things symbolic, rituals?
No, they're outright rituals,
they're rituals
that they're performing.
So you think, okay, so my next, all right, Rosie, did you want to say something? Because I didn't want to cut you off.
I was going to say there was originally what was really interesting and what I thought was the fact that like how, you know what, go ahead. It doesn't matter. I was going to say it's interesting how in order to keep up like the idea of that a celebrity could have nothing hidden from us, the normal people, it's like that's why you have this pervasive paparazzi that is always photographing like literally everything, even though they're only photographing
5 seconds of their day.
5 seconds of their day, or a photo here every couple weeks. You know, so people would think like, oh, what's going on? You know, this woman can't have anything. Britney Spears can't have anything to hide because I saw some picture on TMZ or Paris Hilton or, you know, one of these websites like that, or like, oh, she was in Colorado last weekend or something like that. She can't, you know, so we get a little taste of what they want. I don't know. Yeah. I just thought the paparazzi, it was really interesting where you said that they try so hard to make sure that no one could ever think that they are, could have these ties to it, because we feel like we're are so, like we know them on a personal level because we have this great access to them, in air quotes, you know. Anyway, that's I just had that thought.
Okay, 2 last names real quick. Three last names, sorry. Beyonce, in or out?
Yes, totally in. I just, Kathy Fox did a blog with me. Beyonce took the Grand High Priestess position when Gloria Vanderbilt died. So she took over Gloria's.
Wow. Okay. Here's one that's confusing.
Well, I think this is interesting. People may not know this. Gloria Vanderbilt is Anderson Cooper's mom,
right?
Correct?
Yeah.
And they have like that famous photo that she put out where they're she's reading to little Anderson and
Yep.
his brother or sister, I can't remember exactly. And they have that like the demonic thing like right over there.
Oh yeah, over
So-
his bed,
Yeah,
on his
her bed,
headboard,
yeah.
her bed, yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, there's actually Kathy and I Kathy did a blog on if you go to Twitter at Kathy with a C, Kathy Fox, you can read a blog about Gloria Vanderbilt, and she breaks down piece for piece all of the symbology of that picture above Cooper and those guys. So if people want to know what that means and represents to the Illuminati, that's broken down
Okay,
piece by piece. So
cool. I want to check that out. I got two more names. One is I'm utterly confused by this individual. And then the other one, I'm not confused, but I'm just curious. The first one is Kanye West. What's your opinion on him?
good old Kanye. He is in.
He's in.
Yeah, he's the high priest.
Do you think he wants out?
I wrestle with that. I've put it out there. I've directly messaged him and said, Kanye, if you're out, I really want to hear your story, and I will support the man 100%.
Yeah.
But what I see happening is reminiscent of those who are operating under the Christian program of the Illuminati, where, you see him doing even, under his Christianity, he's doing these massive concerts, which we've talked about, the massive gathering and, getting everybody to be doing the same movements, the same songs, the same repetition. So you see him getting these massive groups doing that. So to me, it's more about, seems like he's doing more with the spiritual gates than attempting to get out and make it really about Jesus Christ. But I've given him the loophole and said, hey, Kanye, if you're really out, let me know. I did hear when he, supposedly came out and confessed that he almost took his daughter's life in ritual. To me, I'm just going to be honest, it seems like a show. When you're really in the system and you're trying to defect or get out, literally they will hunt you down or they will oppress you until you commit suicide. Without Jesus Christ, those are your only options. And I just can't fathom, his wife is a high priest, her whole family are high priestesses, and he's still making money. So that's a big indicator. Yeah, a lot of money. And that's the first thing. If you attempt to, defect and you're not doing what they want you to do, they're going to take away your fame, your fortune. They will make it so you never can even get a job not even at McDonald's. I mean, they will hit you so hard. And I don't see that. I see him prospering, making more. And so that tells me that what he's doing is for the system, that it's not really because he wants out. But then I see him working with Trump. And, I will say that, he helped to make some real headway, especially with stuff going on in the prison system, which that was an avenue that the Illuminati uses to get individuals for ritual or adrenochrome. So it seems like he was very influential in that. So I do see there's some things that he's doing on some level to work with Trump. So it really puts him in that gray area for me.
Yeah.
So he's been in, but I don't know where he's standing right now.
So one of the things that happened with him was he had a mental breakdown. And so did Britney Spears. She's had multiple. And so I'm wondering if he truly did surrender his life to Christ at some level. And he just, if there's this internal battle that's happening between that small part that's been given to Christ, which Christ will claim and receive,
Right.
Versus being able to be set free. I mean, maybe he's torn because he truly does love his family, his children and his wife, and maybe he doesn't know, and he's just trying to play it the best he can. I don't know. I don't want to make excuse. I don't know.
Yeah, and that's possible because they wouldn't let him with the high level that his family is. They're not going to let him walk away with his kid. So he may be staying knowing that he has no other choice, because if he leaves, he has no more access to his kids.
Yeah.
They'll keep that access and close him off. So he may be staying, to protect his children.
Man.
But it's hard to know for sure.
Wow. I mean, so you mentioned within the Christian circles, the Illuminati's infiltrated within the Christian circles. That intrigues me because that's not something that I would think that they would even be interested in.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, they've got people in every church. That's one of the programs is that they train somebody to, people to live these perfect Christian lives. And that's how they get access into the churches, to tear them down from the inside out.
And when you say tear them down from the inside out, does that mean just cause division, start splits?
It could be division, strife. Some of them, you've got people who are active witches or high-level people who will, cast spells or bring demons into the church. So it just depends. But, there's people who, specifically with like the split personalities where they split you when you go through the program. So some of these people, they don't have, like, their conscious life is that of a Christian. They would not know that they had anything to do with the system or Satanism at all. Like their programming will cause them to black out or lose time, so that when they're at rituals or other things, they have no conscious memory of those things. And unless their programming starts to break down and they start to have memories, which usually come back while they're sleeping, they would have no recollection at all of their involvement in the Satanism. And they would just truly believe and think that, they are real God-loving people. So that's one of the programs that is built in, so the enemy can operate in the church.
Man, gosh, he is. Well, I mean, the parable of the where he comes in and sows in the tares among the wheat, and they ask Jesus, "What do we do?" And he's like, "No, leave them. I'll take care of it at the end of the day. I'll separate them out, and some will be thrown in the fire, and some will be taken in." Man, that's crazy. Okay, one last name. I mentioned this person earlier, and I want to ask a specific question about him. His first movie, he's a movie star. His first movie he ever did was called The Man with One Red Shoe. And it's an actor by the name of Tom Hanks. Is there significance to that?
Yeah, the red shoes are significant to the Jesuit line or the Kabbalah. And, it does link to the Vatican and the Pope, who also has red shoes. And here I'll give a little graphic warning, but usually the red shoes are made from, a ritual kill and made from the human skin. So, so if he's in the One Red Shoe Club, that's a pretty strong statement.
Yeah. Do you think that was a not predictive programming, but it just literally a movie that was put in place as sort of him signaling to the other people in the Brotherhood, like, "Hey, I'm in"?
Yeah, they do put out movies or have ways of signaling, like, what position they're in, so people know. There's protocols for how you interact with people in different positions and levels.
Yeah.
So it'd be a way of kind of establishing territory or dominance.
Yeah. Wow. So this crossed my mind. You mentioned Molech earlier, and about a year ago, maybe a little over a year ago, when Brett Kavanaugh was being just put through the ringer for his Supreme Court nomination, at the same exact time on the Mall in D.C., they had the it was a gate, the gate to Molech. It was, or was it Molech or Baal?
Baal.
It was Baal. Baal, yeah.
Spirit gate to the Temple of Baal.
Yeah. And it was erected up onto the mall in D.C. And it was literally, you would go through the gate and you walk towards the Capitol, which is, of course, is where the Supreme Court's up there and everything else. Do you think that's significant? Was there something to that? I've heard of London, D.C., and the Vatican or Rome being the three cities that are these they have prominence within that whole realm. And was that significant in that way?
Yeah, actually, that was part of one of the end time rituals. So this past year, like that event was for the opening of the third book of the Mothers, which was a set of 5 apocalyptic books. So that ritual literally happened at that time, and they opened the prophecies for that third book.
So that was a year ago. Are we into the 4th or 5th book yet?
Actually, the fifth book was to be opened on April 24th this year, and that ritual did not take place. So, yeah, that was the one I was trained to open, and literally both me and my training partner had government eyes on and people calling us to make sure we were spiritually present as well as physically present in our homes.
Wow.
And the series of books was, it was kind of like a mock of the life of Christ. So like the first book was about, his coming. The second book was about his baptism. The third book was about the temptation. The fourth book was his calling into ministry. And the fifth book was his consummation. So basically all of those were interrupted. So even that third one was interrupted and did not go all the way as they had planned and been trained to do. And but it doesn't mean the Antichrist, won't rise. It just meant Satan didn't get his rituals the way he wanted them to turn out.
Yeah.
So
have they tried those before historically?
No, they did prep for those. They were, they're very specific. So my whole life, I was trained for that. That was one of the things.
For April 20th.
Open that fifth book. Yep. Wow. So I knew, like, as soon as I heard of the first book opening, like, I knew it would be the next, whatever April followed that would be when the fifth book opened.
So let's see, that was April 20, would you say the 24th?
Yep, April 24th on the 2020.
Okay. When was Easter this year? Was it in March? I was just...
it was close to that, yeah.
Yeah, I was just curious.
It did not fall on Easter weekend.
Okay. Yeah, I was just
the significance, though, is that April 24th is right smack dab in the middle of Baal Worship Week. So that's a high week of sacrifices and rituals. So that day is the middle date every single year when they offer the sacrifices to Baal.
Okay. Wow. This has been a crazy interview. Honestly, I didn't know how this was going to go. I first of all, I can't thank you enough for just taking so much time with us. And I mean, I don't even know where to go from here. Do you have any questions, Rosie? I mean, Rachel had to bounce. She had some family stuff. She quietly had to jump off. But I have other questions. Maybe I know you're super busy, but maybe
we could plan another show. So I can do that.
I totally would, because I have questions about Skull and Bones. I have questions about Masonic traditions. We did a whole series. So Jessie, I work in DC. It's my day job, and I was driving through DC, and I started just noticing all of these just symbols of they weren't right. I knew they weren't good, and then I started doing some research on DC, on the Masonic influence in the United States. We did a whole series on it, and there's so much that's just unknown about that. You can find out, stuff about the Masons, but there's a lot that is just still kept very secret. And so I have questions about them too. So maybe we can bring you back on, and I man, honestly, just the current event stuff that's going on, like the Biden stuff that's happening, the election's right around the corner. There's no doubt in my mind there's enormous spiritual warfare. So I see conflict within the church. And what blows me away is the major conflict that I'm seeing. And even just this week, there was a prominent Christian named John Piper, which you probably heard of. And he wrote a blog about, basically saying that Trump's pride was enough for him to not vote at all. And he said that pride was equal with the sin of abortion, or murder. I mean, that's the essence of what it was. And I read his article, and I read several articles in opposition of what he said, just kind of like they were kind of writing a response to that, to other believers, these are pastors. I think abortion, I can be wrong, but I really believe that there is a satanic, power behind that. There's a principality that is getting some kind of power, glory, and if it ends in our nation, if it's outlawed, if it's overturned in the Supreme Court, and it becomes what we hope it will, which it'll stop, I think that would be a huge victory, not only for our nation. I think that the judgment on our nation might find reprieve. I mean, how do we atone for that many murders? But I mean, and I think that's at stake in this election. I really do think that's what's at stake in this election. To me, it boils down that simple: abortion or not. And people that say Trump's ego gets in the way, and so I see the Christian church in conflict with that, and it troubles me greatly, because I'll take someone's arrogant attitude if I can end an innocent life, not if I can stop the ending of innocent life. That came out really wrong.
Save an innocent life.
Yes. All right.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's more. There is so much more at stake. And what we see happening is that, the church really should be stepping up to the plate, because our entire, our freedom as the body of Christ is really what's at stake. And with that, all of these topics, the freedom of our children, the saving of life from abortion, being able to have free speech, being able to bear weapons, all of those things, are at stake, because those are the things that the enemy literally, we've allowed the enemy to come in for so long, so subtly, that we didn't even realize that literally we're being stripped of all of our armor. Where is our helmet of salvation? How many people really know and have that assurance of their salvation? What about the breastplate of righteousness? We can certainly look at the church and we can see a lot of unrighteousness, and what about truth and faith? And all of these things, the enemy literally has stripped us of our armor, so we cannot fight him. And now he's coming in with his demonic hordes and his antichrist. He's got one agenda: That's to take God off his throne. He doesn't care about Christians. He's already stripped us of our armor. And if we're not fighting, he's going to destroy us. That's his next thing, is to use all of those who follow him to do away with us. And then, he doesn't even care about those who serve him. He's going to kill all of them too. So, all he cares about is that he gets his demonic hordes into heaven. And then they're done. He doesn't care how many years these people have served him. He has no loyalty. He has, no honoring of that long time service. He really does not care. He literally comes to steal, kill, and destroy. And so without the church, without us, how can those captives be set free? How can those people in darkness come out unless they hear the word of God? That's where faith comes from. So by us backing down and doing nothing and not standing up in this fight, we're literally, losing out on the harvest. There are souls at stake here. And people don't understand how vast that number is. We're not just talking about the yahoos in politics. There's this whole underground network. These dumb bases, I encourage people to research those. Some of the largest ones, like NORAD, is like the size of a skyscraper underground. You're talking more than 80 floors. Okay. And think of how many people could live in a city or a building like that with over 80 floors. And, to know that they have people that have never left. They've been bred and born in those places and have never left them. Wow. And we're talking mass amounts of people here. And if the church if we're only operating on above ground, we're nowhere near where God wants us to be having the influence, of impact. Like the Lord promises us an end time harvest, a second harvest. And so this is our time. We need to step it up. We need to be praying and saying, okay, Lord, show me the truth of what's really going on, how I can get involved, and, let me preach your word with boldness so that even those who have never seen the light of day will hear your word, and God will open those doors for us. But, if only one person is doing that, well, the harvest isn't going to be that grand,
Right. Yeah.
So all of us need to come together, every single one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, which is really interesting. Just we were talking about the underground bases as well. I was watching something recently that they've found archaeological digs of like buildings built from the top down, like hidden underground, that are like 100 stories, and they could feed, and all these underground things. So I was going to say it's nothing new under the sun. Sadly, it's sad to, the military base. I can't remember what the whistleblower guy's name is. It was just absolutely mind blowing. I think he came out in like the 90s. What's that?
Dean?
I think so. Yeah, I just remember seeing, just because he wasn't around for very long. He came out, did a couple like interviews that were videotaped. But I was gonna say the other thing, to kind of sum it up for me, and then I'll end my thing with this is, it's funny if they like come after people who are not afraid to talk about this stuff or share it with people, not just because I don't think of anything like, oh, I have this, platform, and, I'm not thinking that, but I mean, just that I'm not, at least for myself, I'm not scared to talk about this stuff, with my friends or share the gospel or anything like that. Like, if we're getting pretty close, and if the pre-trib is not real and we have to go through it and we get killed, I was going to say, like, if they come for us first because we're more outspoken, I mean, yeah, cool. like heaven will be a lot cooler if like all of us are hanging out there at the same time. Like there'd be a lot of really cool people that we could all hang out, and I'm ready for it. I was going to say.
It says in Revelation that all those who are martyred are going to be sitting at the foot of God. For how long, God? How long until you avenge our blood? And then he does. So
yeah,
we'll join the chorus of that, I guess.
Yeah, but I was going to say, it'd be,
I hope not, but man.
I'd be in good company going down with some good people.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Man, well, Jessie, you're amazing. And again, I can't thank you enough for spending this time with us. And you absolutely have an open door here. You just send me a message. If you have something you want to say, it's yours. Let me know. We'll bring you on. I'm like, one of the things is we've never had a guest that has come on that hasn't just become a friend.
That's awesome.
Did you say that as a warning?
I did want to say one more thing for the Masonic stuff. Again, Kathy Fox is a great resource. If you go to her Twitter at Kathy Fox, both Kathy's with a C. She has another blog on there that I wrote called Silence Breaks Forth into Song. And so I got 7 of them done before they censored me and refused to allow me to do any more threads at all on Twitter. And I can't even go to WordPress and type out these things or email it. So this is how censored I am. They literally will not let me put out any more about the Masonic stuff. But in that thread, Silence Breaks Forth into Songs, the blog starts to talk about like the significance in the Masonic world and, you know, how they build ritual ground, how they view people, you know, the significant roles. So I would encourage people to read that because it will give you a better perspective. And I kind of do it almost like a poetry type piece with a lot of questions, you know, to try to help break it down. And I have videos that I include, which are straight from the Masonic site. So you can see, you know, from their own books, their own material, what they believe, what they're stating. So it's pretty informative. So I would encourage people to look into that.
Awesome. We'll put a link to that. I'll put a link to Kathy's Twitter, and we're definitely going to put a link to Illuminate the Darkness, your website, so people can connect with you there. I know you have a Patreon, and I know that would help you in your ministry. So we'll put a link to that as well. Because look, we do this. We don't have a Patreon. We're just blessed right now. And but if someone can bless you, then we would encourage our listener. If you've heard this and it's moved you, then consider blessing Jessie with some financial help, because this is how it moves forward. It just doesn't happen. It is, unfortunately, that's part of the system of this world. Is this financial side of things, which is a whole nother conversation. The banks, that I could have. Yeah.
I also have my book, His Kingdom Comes in Power, The Battle, just went out this week you can get that on Amazon or on Kindle.
Sweet.
So people can look into that as well.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great. I'll put a link to that as well. We'll link it up. Hopefully people will follow the links and look for you. But we will have you back again for sure. And until we
let me know.
Yes, absolutely. And if you don't mind, stay on for a second. We're going to cut the recording now. So everybody have a blessed week. We'll catch you next time on All Out War. Thanks for hanging out for us for this long one, but it was a good one. We'll catch you next time on All Out War.